Hey, shalom, everybody. Shalom. I'm Jeff Brannon.
And I'm Miranda Brannon.
Welcome to the Way Remnant, guys. We are so excited tonight. We have a special guest waiting back in the green room. Not this room, guys, here, but we have Fritz Zimmerman waiting in the wings, ready to come on. And guys, we're very blessed and honored to have him on here. If you know anything about my ministry and what we've been doing, you know that while we teach on all kinds of things, I have a passion, Miranda, for the Giants and all these things that came about as in the days of Jared and the days of Noah, all this kind of stuff. And I am so excited.
We have so many questions.
So many questions. This topic, Miranda, is something that I think that I really started getting into about 2012, and it just blew things up. And we have a man that has spent years and decades studying this, and so I am super excited tonight. Guys, as we begin the show tonight, if you want to go ahead and hit that share button, hit the like button, get word out. Tonight is going to be a great night. We're I don't know. I'm very excited, Miranda.
And if you've got questions, get them ready.
Yeah, we may have a little time at the end of this for Fritz to answer some questions. If you do want questions, type them in all caps. Miranda will try to keep up with that, and we'll look towards some of those things like that. So. All right, we're getting ready. A couple of announcements, guys. Next week on September 4th, I'm excited to announce that we're going to have Nate Wolf from Fired for Truth. He's going to be on talking about how he came to Torah. Very excited about that. And then the following Sunday on September 11th, we're going to be having Vicki Joy come on talking about her book, They Only Come Out at Night, sleep paralysis and all kinds of stuff. I'm excited about that. We're very excited. So I think that's oh, there we go. Yeah. Thanks, Ian. There we go. Fancy background wall, kind of Victorian. Yeah, that's how we do it, brother.
Kind of matches our living room right
now. Yeah, that's good stuff. All right. Hey, well, guys, without further ado, we're going to bring on Fritz, and let's see, make sure we get him here. Hey, shalom, Fritz.
Good evening. Good to be with you.
Hey, very good. Very excited. So glad that you could join us tonight. We're very honored.
Yeah, thank you. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, so I know I have a little bit of your bio here that I grabbed from some of your books. My gosh, how many books? Like 6 million books that you wrote. Oh my gosh, I mean it's a lot. I think your latest book was on fairies, correct?
Yeah, it was on fairies because they have a real link to the Giants.
Oh my gosh.
So I wrote the Encyclopedia of Ancient Fairies, and that's available on Amazon. It's 530 pages. So
Wow.
Anything and everything you want to know about fairies is in there.
Wow. Well, that's great. I know that your bio says that you're an unaffiliated scholar with a BA in history from Purdue University. I believe it's around 20 years of archaeological field work, exploring over 700 sites, photographing over 200 mounds of earthworks in the Ohio Valley. You have been around doing this for a long time.
Yeah, the travel guide going to 700 sites. That was a lot of banging on doors, returning to sites if people weren't home. But there had never been an archaeological survey done of Indiana. So 400 of those sites were here in Indiana. And then the rest of the sites were in Ohio, West Virginia, Kentucky, and Michigan, and of course, Ohio.
Wow. I added you as a Facebook friend probably around 2015 after I was publishing my book on the Giants, and your stuff just kept popping up, I think, with the algorithms. So we've been Facebook friends for a while, but we've never chatted or talked. So I am super excited. I know some of my guests are familiar with you. Some of them may not. Could you introduce yourself a little bit, Fritz? Is it okay if I call you Fritz?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. Could you introduce yourself a little bit to our audience?
Well, I'm Fritz Zimmerman. I've been exploring mounds and earthworks, and of course the giants. And there's one thing that I have that nobody in the country, unless they lived here, would have access to. And here in Allen County, we have the second largest, could be bigger than the Mormon, genealogical library in the
Wow.
country. So it means that I had access to in the 1800s, they made county histories. And then in those county histories, they would generally have a section called antiquities. And then they would talk about mounds in the county. They would also talk about giant skeletons
Wow.
if they found those. But they would give a name of like a mound being on the John Thompson farm in Liberty Township, Section 12. Sometimes they would narrow it down to the southwest quarter of the northeast quarter of the southeast corner, which would really narrow it down where I could find, exactly where that mound was. So I would take the old plat maps that they also had with the county histories, find out where this guy lived, match it up with new maps, and then I would go to that site and knock on the door and see if they knew about the mound or if it was gone. I had maybe 1 in 4 chance that if I visited a site that I would actually, find something. So that took 12 years. And
Wow.
getting the Encyclopedia of Ancient Giants, 900 accounts. A lot of those newspapers, a lot of them came out of these county histories. But, the county histories, I mean, those were meant for kind of the well-to-do people in the county. So it was no place to be making stuff up. That if, they found a 7 or 8 foot skeleton in a mound and they printed it in that book, you could pretty much believe that, that was true.
Nice. Let me. I do have a couple of questions before we get into the giants and everything like that. I'd like to ask you, like, when you were younger, what was your spiritual walk like, and did that influence any of your research?
Not really, because I had a double major. I was also in radio, television, communications. I worked a year as a weekend weatherman at our CBS affiliate here in
Nice.
Fort Wayne. And after that, I had a production company and my partner left. And I was looking to do a small documentary. And I went through these county histories and found mounds. And with a degree in history, I had no idea these things existed.
Wow.
So the initial thing was to find about 6 or 7 here in Northeast Indiana or throughout Northeast Indiana and photograph those and just make a short documentary. But I started finding giants and then more giants, and then I'd research the next county and the next county. And the next thing you know, I had researched about 100 counties per state, about 500 counties.
Wow. So that's what got you started with research into giants and everything. Is that correct?
Yeah, I found a couple, then I would find another, and then I would find another, and I'd find another, and then I knew that I was on to something. Of course, I could have printed a list of giants probably 5 years before the Nephilim Chronicles, Fallen Angels came out. But the hard thing to do was to figure out who these people were.
So why do you believe knowing about the giants, about the mounds? You mentioned that that you have a degree in history. You didn't learn any of this while you're going to university. Why do you believe knowing this is important? I mean, I have an idea, and I think our audience does, but I'd like to hear it from you, Fritz. Why do you believe knowing about the giants, knowing about the mounds, why do you believe that's important as we begin to dig into this tonight?
Well, Genesis 6:4 says there were giants in those days and also after that. And that just kind of became my mission, was to prove that one sentence in the Bible to be true. And I had no idea who these people were. I mean, they could have been Eskimos, they could have been people from the Canary Islands.
Right.
I mean, they could have been Native Americans. But when I got into it, and then the earthworks, and then the math, advanced math of pi and square roots, Pythagorean theory, trigonometry, that I knew that it was not Native Americans. And the Amorites controlled Babylon from 2000 BC to 1600 BC. And I knew they had all this math. They had the Pythagorean theorem 1,000 years before Pythagorean had it.
Yeah.
So when we're limiting people down, like who could these people be? That was the best choice. We already knew they were giants. We knew that they knew advanced mathematics. We knew that they were into the solar equinoxes and solstices and different stars rising. Of course, lunar alignments, which we see in Newark and some other earthworks. So everything lined up with them.
Wow. I am. You've mentioned so many things right there that I want to dive into, but let me ask you this: how many? So you've studied this for about 20 years. How many recorded cases? And I'm putting you on the spot. How many recorded cases of giants do you think that you've looked up in your research here in North America?
Total research, I went through about 10,000 books.
Wow.
That is a lot.
That's amazing. So for my audience, guys, I want to point this out, that if you go and you look at Fritz's work and his books and everything, it's amazing. So many documented cases that are very difficult to go find just for the average common person. You can't just go out and Google these things. I mean, you have to actually go to the like you say, the county records or maybe to old newspapers. You're looking up microfilm. You're looking up all these things, and I think it's so important to get these things documented, because it's an entire narrative that is not being taught at all, and it was readily available. It was all over the place. There's a question here from Ian. He said, did there seem to be an emphasis on Ohio, and why? So where would you say the hot spot for North America for giant remains? Where would you say that would be?
Well, Ohio would probably be number one. Indiana would be number two. Probably Kentucky 3, West Virginia 4.
Wow.
And Michigan number 5.
Right.
But we also had a lot of giants in New York and Pennsylvania as well, because the Allegheny River comes down to form the Ohio. So that was part of that river basin of the Ohio that we can just follow up. So those 7 states would probably comprise about 80% of all the giants.
Wow. Yeah, I'm originally from Texas, and I know we had some cases around Rockwall and things like that. And now I live up here we actually live in Moundsville, West Virginia. We can get into some of that in a little bit, but Fritz, I believe the fallen watchers, like you talked about, the fallen watchers mated with the daughters of man. and they produce like a human hybrid that we call in the scripture the Nephilim or the Nephilim, depending on what part of Galilee you're from. What similarities or what characteristics have you found in your research that kind of tie the Nephilim together? Maybe pointing out that they're not man as we know them. Maybe it's if you look at it from a purely scientific category, would they fit into some kind of a scientific category that you're familiar with?
No, what we're dealing with is a completely different species of man. Most of the giants had sloping foreheads, bulging eyebrows, and massive jaws.
I think I have a picture that you may have sent. Let me bring that up while we're talking. I don't know if you can see that on your screen. Is that?
Yeah, that's one. That's one from California, but it does give you an idea of the bulging eyebrows. Absolutely no forehead whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so, I ask people when I show them skulls like this, the expert, it's like, name me a Native American tribe that had skulls like this.
Yeah, that's definitely not what a modern what we term as a Homo sapien, what that would look like, correct?
Right. This is more. It's more of a Neanderthal hybrid. I mean, I can't say that it's completely Neanderthal, but it certainly has many of the traits with the bulging irid and then having no forehead on it. So in the Encyclopedia of Ancient Giants, I think I have about 300 or 400 cases of skulls that were described like this.
Wow. So we're not talking about just a fluke occurrence, or maybe someone that was born with dwarfism, or some other kind of rational modern day explanation. We have a ton of these things that were discovered, and clearly they were a different breed, a different race, and we know that if we're mixing what we would call fallen angels with humans, and that's going to create some kind of a hybrid creature, and I think that's what we're seeing here, correct?
Yes, absolutely.
So, I've got another picture on the screen. Is this is something similar with another one that was found, correct?
I'm still seeing the same picture.
Okay. Let's see if we can go to this next one here. How about this? This is that California Neanderthal hybrid. And again, I think you can see there's no real forehead. This just really just comes down, and it's got the big protruding brow here. Let's see.
Right. And there were a lot of skeletons found in California. No. Exactly why, I don't know. But we do have a lot of cases, and definitely have a lot of cases of skulls like this. But you can see how similar this is to the first photo that we showed, because you have the protruding brow ridge and basically no forehead. And then when you look at the mouth, and then how small the jaw is, that this certainly isn't a modern Homo sapien, but a completely different breed of man.
I have a slide that I added to what you sent me. These were the ancient Nordic skulls uncovered at an Indiana henge site. And I have a comparison of this center one. So if you want to maybe talk about that a little bit, this is a modern human skull, and then I put a comparison up next to each other, but you can clearly see exactly like what you're talking about. The jaws smaller. You have this, there's, like you say, there's just no forehead. You have this big brow that comes up on the skull to the right of the screen. I'm not sure how it looks on the camera. The skull with the black background. That's the Nephilim skull that we believe. And then they have this really big hump back here in the back.
That's called a occipital bun.
Okay.
And we generally associate the occipital bun with Neanderthal, but Northern Europeans still had an occipital bun very close to this skeleton-wise. This would be the type of skeleton that you would find, because these same people are the ones that built Stonehenge. They built the hinges throughout the British Isles.
Wow.
We have hinges here in North America. A hinge is a circular earthwork, which I think I sent you some picture of hinges, so I won't get ahead of myself.
Okay.
But that occipital bun was still present in Europe up to about 2000 BC. The Amorites were Indo-European, so it would make sense that that skull would show up here if, in fact, those people were migrating over here. And then again, I've tried to ask experts. It's like, name me a Native American tribe that has an occipital bun.
Right.
And there is none.
Wow.
So we cannot ascribe any of these skeletons to any known Native American tribe.
In the picture that I had for the thumbnail of the program, I show the cover for the encyclopedia, and it shows a skeleton with an elongated skull. It didn't look like it had the rings, to make it long and all that kind of stuff. Would you say that? And I know that you've collaborated with L.A. Marzulli, and he's done a lot of work with the elongated skulls that he got from Peru. Would you connect those elongated skulls to the Nephilim pretty much all the time?
Yeah, I think there's a real connection there. I've never really studied South America.
Okay.
Except, that I know that they have elongated skulls. They have blonde hair, or skulls that still have blonde hair on them. LA and his research did DNA on some of the skulls that they were studying, and the origin went back to the Middle East. So
Wow.
That would corroborate my theory of these were the Amorites. Now that picture on the encyclopedia, I had found that artist and I just liked that picture.
Right.
But that picture is not really representative of what the skulls looked like.
Okay.
It was just a great picture and made for a good cover.
Nice.
So, yeah, in some instances, they did have, the big elongated skulls.
Right.
So we won't completely distance ourselves from that.
Sure.
But that would not be indicative of what 90% of them look like.
Okay. So Fritz, we know that the Rephaim in the scripture were, if you look at the etymology of the word, they're kind of like the faded ones. The Rephaim, Rapha is the root of that. It denotes healing abilities. Like they had to cut off Goliath's head to make him die, right? We know the Anakim were the long necks. Do you correlate anything with the or the terrible ones or the night terrors with possibility like dogmen or fairies or Bigfoot, or do you see any tie-in with any of that? I know we've mentioned the Amorites and we'll get to them in a minute, but do you have any thoughts? Do you have any thoughts on uh, any of these what we call today cryptids with the Nephilim?
Well, that's probably going to go more with the fairies,
Okay.
because in the book of Enoch, the fairies had allied themselves with Satan, and
Okay.
God was sending them to hell. And in mid descent, he changed his mind and he said, wherever you land is what kind of being that you're going to be. So you would have water fairies. Now, in the woods, those end up being Bigfoot.
Okay.
And Bigfoot are basically kind of like fairies. They're mainly ghosts.
I would
That's
agree
why
with
you-
that.
That's
They
why
seem
you're
to
not
be
going to.
there and then gone, right?
Right. People talk about them being in front of them, then in back of them, then on the side of them. And with all these guys out there with shotguns, if there was an actual Bigfoot, somebody would have shot one.
Right.
But since you can't shoot a ghost, then that's where we're at on that. Now, you might be able to see one,
Right.
but I don't think you're going to put a bullet in it because you can't shoot a ghost.
Right. So it'd probably
But
go right through.
yeah, so all the cryptids and all that, that really goes to the fairies. And then I said there's a real tie-in with the fairies and the giants, especially when you get back into British history and Irish and Wales history. Um, they link the giants to the fairies, and in some cases say that the fairies are actually the giants that took that form. So
Oh,
yeah,
interesting. Yeah. Yeah. So I agree with it. I think too often when we talk about the Nephilim and we read that word, it's translated, gigantos in the Septuagint. So now we just automatically go to giants. But I think there were different types. We know that the uh, different ones had different characteristics. We had some that were lion men. We had some different kinds of hybrids. And I could totally see exactly what you're talking about. You have some that maybe were giants, massive in size, but you also had little ones. You had hybrid creatures. You had a variety of all kinds of stuff, and we see this illustrated all through different cultures all around the world, Fritz, where we have these pictures of hybrid beings. We have these pictures of giants. We have these incredible stories of tiny people, whether you call them fairies or leprechauns or you call them all kinds of things. So, um, would you connect what Enoch talked about and what Jasher calls elementals? Is that kind of what you're saying there? With where these spirits would fall down in this judgment if they landed in water. Maybe they're a water spirit, or if they land, different things. Is that kind of what you're equating that to?
yes.
Okay.
So
Very
depending on where they landed, but they also said that they would reside on Earth, and they seem to like burial mounds, and they seem to like to hang around hinges. So there's a connection that somehow these fairies are drawn to the burial mounds. So might be around those. Um, but yeah, it's
wow. That's
Oh, I like what Kelly says.
uh-huh.
Is that where we may get mermaids from?
well, if you believe in mermaids, yeah, that would probably be it.
Okay.
Because I know there's a lot of different cultures and historical things where
with a
people,
lot of lore.
yeah, different sightings. Even some of the founding fathers had claimed to see mermaids.
Right. Shifting gears a little bit, Fritz, I know that if we read the account of Enoch, first Enoch, we know that the fallen watchers gave out technologies, and they list a plethora of different technologies they gave to man at the time. We may call, we call them technologies today. Back in the day, they called them, I think, sacred sciences and things like this. That was given to pre-Diluvian man. Do you see a correlation with this technology given out and the mounds? I think we alluded to it a little bit earlier with some of the higher maths and things like that. But do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, they were given the secret. The biggest one was math, but also tracking the sun, which all of the earthwork, especially the hinges, are aligned to either the equinox or the solstices. Tracking of the sun, tracking of the moon, tracking of stars.
Right.
But you have to realize, too, that in 2000 BC, under King Hammurabi, who was an Amorite, we got our first laws.
Right.
I mean, the first laws were written down that if you killed somebody's donkey, then, this is what you had to pay them back. And so math and so many good things, when we hear about the cradle of civilization in Babylon, I mean, that took place because these fallen angels had shared this technology with this giant race. So I'm about ready to do an article for Marzulli, and I'm going to ask the question. It's like, all right, Amorites, sons of God, they're evil, they're demonic. But then I have another question. It's like, are they? Because in the Bible, it says of the Jewish people, it's like your father is an Amorite and your mother is a Hittite.
Right.
So if you're going to call the Amorite some sort of demonic being, it's right there in the Bible that says that the Jewish people's lineage is the Amorites.
Tied together with some of that. Sure. I mean, we can definitely trace things all the way back to a common person, common lineage. Would you say, I have some slides here that you sent me, and you were talking about the advanced mathematics. Let me throw this up on the screen. This is you mentioned the hinges. I think we have a hinge here in the bottom and a hinge at the maybe the top with these circles. And you mentioned
the hinge in the bottom.
Okay.
And this is a Newark earthwork, and to give people some idea of the size of the circle and the octagon, there is a regulation size golf course inside of this earthwork of this octagon in this circle. That is how big this thing is.
So for our audience that's looking, which circle is it on the screen?
Well, it's the circle and the octagon.
So at the top left, correct?
Yeah, that's Newark Golf Course, but the entire golf course is within the circle and the octagon.
And how big is that again for our audience? There's an entire golf course in there.
Regulation size golf course within that. So when you're standing on one bank, I mean, you have to look way across, which you can because the golf course keeps everything mowed.
Right.
And then in the far distance, you can see another one of those. You can see the embankment in the distance. But, you ask your question, so how did they check their work? I mean, they're so far apart. How did they know? And then we're going to look at another screen of how each one of these openings are aligned to a different lunar event. And well, this is just part of the math, that the diameter of the circle is 1,050 feet. And if you go from the middle of that times 6, it'll put you in the middle of the circle.
Wow.
And
Wow.
from the middle of the octagon, 1,050 times 6 will put you in the middle of the square earthwork.
So Fritz, what you're telling me is without without survey equipment, right? What we call modern day survey equipment, they are lining these things up exactly. I heard that there was a road that was in Ohio that was 60 miles long that these guys built that was perfectly straight. How?
Yeah, we have no definitive evidence. That's Lepper, who conjectured that it went all the way to Newark.
Okay.
But I think we can go about 5 or 6 miles to Ramp Creek.
Okay.
And that's this parallel line. If you look at the octagon and you see this parallel line heading south,
right,
that's the Hopewell Road right there.
Wow. How did ancient man, quote unquote, build the pyramids, build all these megalithic structures, build all the hinges, these massive earthworks that we see? This is huge. How did modern archaeology will tell us that they built it with wooden shovels or copper shovels and copper tools, but this is incredible. We live here in Moundsville. The Mound it's massive. It was I don't know how they tell you that this is going to be built like in a little bit of time with a bunch of Indians with seashells or some kind of stuff digging things out. This is that other zoomed in picture on the circle and the octagon, and you said this has something to do with a lunar calendar. You want to get into that?
Well, you can see that every one of these openings in the octagon is minimum northern moon set, maximum northern moon set, maximum northern moon rise.
Wow.
More moon rises over here. And if you look at where the maximum southern moon set is, and then the minimum, you can see how they parallel the circle.
That is amazing.
Those go on both sides of that circle. So that circle at 1,050 feet, they lined that up perfect on that, which is just, it's amazing, that they were able to lay all this out. But, like I said, when you're at ground level, you really can't tell what it is. If you're back at the octagon, you can kind of see the circle in the distance, but all of these earthworks were meant to be seen from the air. Just
like the Nazca lines, right? Down in South America.
Yeah, only these are far more complex than the Nazca lines.
Oh, I'm looking at this, and Fritz, I think about this. How in the world do they expect, supposedly primitive man with no computers, no modern day survey equipment to get these things so exacting? I think it takes great faith to believe that people without some kind of other technology. So you believe that this technology was handed down by the fallen watchers and is what we call sacred sciences today and different things like this. You mentioned that they had a higher form of even trigonometry. Do you want to get into that a little bit?
Yeah, they found in Babylon at the time when the the Amorites were there, they found some worksheets and they were doing advanced trigonometry on triangles, and they said that their advanced trigonometry was of a higher level than what we currently have.
Wow.
And they built this stuff because they could. They had the knowledge. I interviewed a surveyor in one of LA's Marzulli's videos, one of his documentary movies, In Search of the Ancient Nephilim, which I would highly encourage everyone to watch. And I would say, if I wanted to lay this out today, it's like, what would be the math skills that I would need? And he said, you would have to know trigonometry.
Wow.
And then, of course, you would have to know surveying. So they obviously could survey.
Right.
Because we saw that on the last slide. Now, this circle that is within the octagon,
right,
each one of those sides is also 210 feet on each side.
So you're saying this square inside of the octagon is a perfect square.
Right. So it's a squared circle. So the circle and then the square both have the same area. So it is a squared circle.
Wow.
And so, again, it's advanced mathematics. And you can see right on top of the very top line, it says 1050.
Right.
Right on the very top. And that is the diameter of the circle.
Wow. Wow. We had a question from the audience with Misty asked, did the ancient American Indian tribes drive them out, or what do you believe happened to the giants that were living here?
Well, the Dakota Sioux were living in that region and were kind of adopted by the Amorite.
Okay.
And then the Hopewell Sioux learned the knowledge of the Amorite, and it was a slow process over 2,000 years, but eventually the Amorites just got absorbed into the Dakota Sioux people. And there's an interesting story of George Catlin when he went out west and was the first to discover the Mandan Indians. And he said that many of them had red hair, many of them had blonde hair, a lot of them had green eyes, blue eyes. So this is just showing that over the years that this Indo-European people had mixed with them, because blonde hair, green eyes, blue eyes, those are both recessive genes. So your mother and your father both have to have that in their gene pool,
okay,
for you to have green eyes.
Wow.
And I know I hear stories of Prince Maddox and that. Well, 12 or 13 guys did not change the genetic makeup of an entire Indian tribe.
Right. Well, I believe that.
So you'll see over in Arkansas, Missouri, that whole area, you'll see mounds and earthworks that are very similar to what you find in Ohio, but the Dakota Sioux, after they absorbed the Amorites, they were overrun by the Algonquins, who were in Canada, and knocked them out of there. So the Sioux left, some went north and some went south up the Mississippi, but the Dakota Sioux tribes, like Arkansas of Arkansas, and we get some state names, from these Dakota Sioux tribes. But we're going to find giants, we're going to find mounds, and we're also going to find earthworks over there, but certainly not to the degree that we're going to find in the Ohio Valley. But, that remnant still exists, post 500 AD, where they were still constructing some of these earthworks.
Wow. So, Fritz, I know Miranda and I visited some of the earthworks ourselves. We visited Marietta. We visited obviously here in Moundsville. We visited the Serpent Mounds, and we've read some accounts. But what? Two questions here. What is the narrative that the modern archaeologists or anthropologists give concerning the mounds and who built them and what their purpose was, versus who do you think built them and then what for purpose? So, what's the official, like, if you were to Google this, if you go to a seminar put on by some of these archaeologists or anthropologists, what's the narrative? Are they saying that the American Indians are the mound builders?
Yes, they were Native Americans, and if you were to write a report or anything else that would disagree with that paradigm, you would be censored and you would lose your job.
So have you ever been asked to come and hold a talk? I mean, you have so much information gathered. Have you ever been asked to come talk at some of these conferences or anything like that?
Well, the conference era is kind of over.
Yeah.
We used to have conferences everywhere. I was traveling everywhere going to conferences.
Right.
But yeah, the archaeological line is Native Americans. And then you bring up something like, well, did the Native Americans have pi and square root? Well, then we go back to the usual. What? You don't think they did it? What, are you a racist? So
Right.
any kind of disagreement on their theory is just, their response isn't like, well, we don't know, we don't know why there's pi and square root and trigonometry.
Just a coincidence.
But to believe that they didn't have it is obviously you're a racist.
Right.
So I just deal with that. That's so pervasive right now, this woke everything.
Right.
But no, they do not entertain at all that there was another people that came here and were the builders of these geometric earthworks in the Ohio Valley.
So,
and of course, I stand fast that they were the Amorites, because I knew they knew math, and I knew that they knew, and I knew that they were giants. I knew that they were a hybrid species, and we certainly see that with the skulls. That this is a completely different race of man, different than modern Homo sapiens, and definitely different than Native Americans.
Would you say that there is a connection between the giants and a lot of the cave systems that are in Appalachia, southern West Virginia, Kentucky?
Yeah, there's been a lot of giants found in those caves.
Very cool. We've wondered about that. Southern West Virginia in particular has a huge cave system down at the bottom, and there's also what they call the quiet zone down there, where there's no cell phone service or internet. And so we've just wondered if there was a connection between those two as well.
Yeah, there's been plenty of giant skeletons found in caves.
What do you think, Fritz? And I'm asking you to speculate here. What do you think the purpose of these giant mounds are? Because there's hundreds of them. I mean, what do you think the purpose? From your study, what do you think the purpose of these mounds were? Obviously, they buried some of their maybe their leaders and things like that. But do you see a purpose?
Well, they were into ancestral worship.
Okay.
So a mound, some of the biggest mounds, now not all. I mean, there's some mounds, like there in Moundsville.
Yep.
The bottom, there was the king, who was like 8 foot something. And then on the top was a female skeleton.
Okay.
Now, what you may not know, and you know at the Moundsville Museum, they have all this stuff disparaging giants and
They
everything.
do.
Yep.
They absolutely.
Well, actually,
yeah.
in the Del Nora Museum, which was there before the Modern Museum, they had that woman's skeleton on display.
Wow.
And she was over 7 foot. And I have a photo of her in a case.
Oh, I would love to.
Now,
We'd love to see that. If you have a,
they have it there at that museum.
you know,
They're not going to show it to anybody.
we
But I have a photograph of it in the old museum, which was called the Del Nora Museum.
we've gone to this. We live here, so we've gone to this a lot, doing research and looking at it. And they have, you walk into the gift shop and they have books, you know, mocking and making fun of anything that's related to what we're talking about tonight. They have an entire display, you know, trying to debunk and throw these things out as myth and just creations of someone's mind. But Fritz, what you've done in the last 20 years, you've gone through and documented. I absolutely love this. You've gone through and documented with county records, with newspaper articles, with all of these things, with pictures and all this. Why the big cover up? Why this whole cover up going on with the Giants, with the Mounds? What's the purpose of all that?
Well, it's just the university paradigm, and that is that they were built by Native Americans. So anything that would lend itself to debunk that theory is just automatically dismissed.
Right.
No matter how much evidence you have, photos, well, just like the Moundsville Museum.
Right.
You know, I want to go there and show him a picture and say, look, you had a giant skeleton in this museum 20 years ago before you built this. So why are you saying there's no giants when one was being displayed? Yeah. Now, in the mound itself, and we have photos of this that we found, they dug a hole into the side of Grave Creek, and they displayed that 8.5-foot skeleton.
Wow.
Inside of the burial mound.
Wow.
Yeah, so he was in there for. Now, they dug into that too, and it wasn't shored up. It wasn't like they had to put timbers. And you know, if you go there, how steep it is.
Oh, it is incredibly steep.
When you're on the top, and if you tried to walk down the side,
you're not walking.
No, you're just going to tumble and fall down this thing.
Yeah.
So this idea of them taking these basketfuls of earth and just throwing them one right off the top of one another.
Yeah.
No, this earth has been packed down so hard.
Yeah.
That after 2,500 years, it is still intact.
Right.
Now, if you dump 2 truckloads of dirt in somebody's driveway, within a year, it would be gone, even with grass growing on it.
Wow. Yeah.
But it's packed so hard. So this basket load of you know, to build these, it's just ridiculous. because they wouldn't have stayed intact as long as they have without the earth just being compacted very strongly and very dense.
Yeah. Well, this mound is super tall. I mean, this is
69 feet.
69 feet tall. Almost right at almost 7 stories tall. I want everybody to kind of get a picture of this.
295 feet in diameter.
This thing is massive, and so when you're looking at the picture on screen, guys, it doesn't look that big, but it's massive, and exactly what Fritz is saying. If you look down the side of this, it is super steep.
Now, what we're looking now on this picture,
yep,
this is in this is the Creel Mound in Charleston, West Virginia.
Okay.
And from this mound, there was 2 parallels that ran to the Kanawha River.
Wow.
But there were 2 hinges on both sides of the earthwork. Hinge being circular earthwork, interior ditch, an outer wall, and both of them had gateways. One was aligned to the summer solstice sunrise, and the other was aligned to the winter solstice sunset. But both of them were 666 feet in circumference.
Wow.
And people say, like, well, they couldn't possibly have feet back then. Well, there was an MIT professor. Those guys at MIT are pretty smart guys.
Yeah.
And he said that the mound builders were using the same foot that we are. But the Babylonians used a base 12 number system, not a base 10.
10, right.
So when you look at a calendar of 12 months, that's Babylon.
Wow.
When you look at a clock, you're looking at Babylon. When you look at a 12-inch foot, you're looking at Babylon.
Interesting.
So a lot of the mounds, the Amorites had a numerological codex called Gematria.
Okay.
And that dictated that 666 was representative of the sun. So we have 2 earthworks aligned to the sun. They're both 666.
Wow.
And 1080 was a square, which was symbolic of the lunar and the earth mother. And we have 5 earthworks in Ohio. Each side is 1,080 feet. So what's interesting about 1080, if you double it, you get 2160, but you got your 216 in there.
Right.
And 216 is a sum total of 6 times 6 times 6.
Wow. Wow.
A lot of times they would use 660 opposed to 666.
Right.
Because they can incorporate the 1080, because 420 and 420 and 240 gives you 1080. So they would use 660 in a series of 420s and 240s. But these are exact over and over and over and over and over again. The same numbers are showing up, 660.
Fritz, are you suggesting that the 666 that we're supposed to understand and know comes from a Babylonian origin, and that should be some kind of thing that we're looking for, maybe as in the days of Noah and the days of Lot, so it shall be in the days, the days of the coming of the Son of Man. Are you suggesting that this may be some form of technology we need to be looking for, or some kind of a sign pointing to the mark of the beast, or anything like that? I'm just curious. Are you making that connection as well?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
If anybody ever reads that scripture, it says, "Let he who hath understanding,
right,
Now that's the key word. Understanding.
Right.
Count. That's the other key word.
Right.
Count the number, and that's the number of the beast.
Right.
Well, who was persecuting the Christians at the time?
Nero, correct?
Romans.
Romans, right.
So now you understand who they are.
Right.
All right, now let's count the Roman numerical system. 500, 100, 50, 10, 5, 1. Add those together, what do you get? 666.
Ah.
That's understanding, count the number. It's a reference to Rome, and it has nothing to do. Because in, I don't know what book it's in, but they bring Solomon 666 talons of gold.
Right.
Well, let's just look at the name Solomon.
Right.
Sol is son, Am is Hindi for son, and An was the Egyptian word for son.
Okay.
So Solomon means son, son, son. So that's why they put the number 666 with him.
Interesting.
Because that's Old Testament, and that's before it got the New Testament connotation of being that evil number. And then there was another person, Adonakam, who was leaving Babylon. But with him were 666 people.
Right.
And again, it's more of a reference to Adonis, who was a sun deity.
Wow.
So they attached that 666 to his name more as a sun number, but certainly nothing to do with the devil or anything like that. So they're completely separated. It's the most misunderstood quote in the Bible.
I 100% agree. You mentioned earlier about these ditches or moats. I'll scroll through a couple pictures here. This is Mound State Park in Anderson, Indiana.
Right, and you can see that it's holding water.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so there was water through there. I'm not showing the gateway, but I'm just showing you the outer berm.
Right.
And then here's a circular platform in the middle.
Right.
This is a Druid's hinge. This is what you would find in England, which is where this photo was taken.
Okay.
But they had explained a Druid's hinge where they had dug up an 8-foot skeleton in New York. And you said you've been to Marietta.
Yeah.
So you can see the resemblance.
Yeah,
well,
here's a picture of Marietta.
Right here's Marietta, a large mound, and now we have the circle that's going around it.
Yep.
Now, Grave Creek had a circle going around that too at one time.
Right.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, one time there was a ditch and there was an outer wall that went around that. And there's quite a few mounds. They don't exist anymore in Ohio that have that.
I think this is what Marietta supposedly looked like before.
Yeah, it's a pretty bad drawing of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what you would see.
So what do you think the purpose of the because we see something similar like with Stonehenge? Is this kind of a tie-in with all the Stonehenge and different things? Because I know around the circle of Stonehenge there was also this ditch. So is there?
Well, that's the hinge. You have the
okay.
stones, and then you have the hinge. And the hinge is same thing: circular earthwork, outer wall, interior ditch, and it's aligned to the. I think it's a summer solstice sunrise.
Okay.
I could be wrong on that.
Okay.
But it's one of the solstices. I thought it was summer.
Right.
So the same thing we're finding in Ohio with the hinges, where we find But it was the same people. It was the Amorites over in England that built all that there.
Right.
And then some came here and they built it here.
So is it your opinion that when maybe when Joshua and the children of Israel began to go into Canaan and began to drive the giants out, do you believe that it's around this time, 700 BC, some depending on your dates, that's when they may have left the Levant and came over to America?
Yeah, there were already some here because they had been mining copper here since about 3000 BC.
Wow.
So they were aware of it. Most of the oldest pieces we have are in the Northeast, like America's Stonehenge, and LA and I investigated different rock chambers that had pieces of quartz put right in the middle of the back of them.
Wow.
Which told us that they weren't potato sellers, because why would a farmer put a very big piece of quartz in there?
Right.
Farmers back in those days weren't really big on whimsy.
Right.
So, so they were east, and I think they were probably bringing it down the St. Lawrence Seaway.
Okay.
But they had been here for a long time, and one of the largest tin mines is only about 30 or 40 miles from Stonehenge.
Wow.
So it was the Copper Age. So copper was like gold.
Right.
And in Michigan at Isle St. Royal, there are 50,000 tons of copper that no one knows what happens to, because it's not in the mounds or it's not on the surface.
Wow.
But 50,000 tons. And I think I read one guy said it would have taken 10,000 men working 1,000 years to extract that copper out of there. So the Amorites were coming over here for copper, and then they were going over to England to mine the tin. And then to go back to what you originally said, it was getting really hot over in the Middle East. The Amorites were feeling pressure from the north, from the Hittites.
Right.
They were getting pressure from the Egyptians from the south. And then we know that the Hebrews were incurring on their land also. And, it says that they slaughtered every man, woman, and child.
Right.
But we know that's not true.
Let me ask you this, Fritz. So you're saying that they not only came across probably during that time frame, but also even earlier than that. So that would definitely, say that they had an affinity for, for navigating the oceans and things like that. Do you see any? You have any theories on why they had a fascination, maybe with the seashells and different types of jewelry and clothing that were that we see buried with these guys? Typically, we find a lot of seashells and different things like that. Do you have any correlation or any theories on that?
I don't know. I think they just thought they were pretty.
Right.
And they were coming up from Florida. Now, we see copper wristbands.
Right.
On a lot of the skeletons. But those are such a minuscule fraction of the amount of copper that was mined out of Isle St. Royal.
Right. I've heard of
wristband is what, 8-10 ounces at
right.
the most, and we're talking 50,000 tons.
Wow.
So, and they have found See, Isle St. Royal copper, it has a signature. It's 99% pure, and the only impurity is 1% silver.
Wow.
So it'll have some silver specks in it. But you didn't have to cook it down. I mean, it wasn't in a rock with a bunch of other stuff.
Right.
Where you had to cook it and then get the impurities out. I mean, it was ready to go.
Wow.
You know, all you had to do was mine it and then ship it off. And they have found vases, Egyptian vases, and some other things that had Isle St. Royal copper in them, and there's just a big shutdown on it. You know, they don't want to discuss that.
Wow.
But it has been found. It has been found in Egyptian artifacts.
Yeah, I know. I've read about discoveries where there were these massive copper axes, massive copper spearheads that just an average man would not be able to wield. And typically the modern archaeologists will tell us, oh, those were just ceremonial. Those were, all that kind of stuff. So it's fascinating. The use of all this copper, man, that's incredible. Let me ask you another question, Fritz. I'm gonna bring this picture back up that we had on earlier. And the question I had was, do you have any theories on the giant skeletons that were buried with moving water, like the ditch and things, and also with how they were ritualistically, they had the feet together to make a circle, because that's something that's pictured in a lot of the mounds that I've seen in our journeys that we've had, where they have stuff. They would have these the feet kind of all in a circle around the main person. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think there is. I had a list one time. I think I had about 150 of different burial mounds. And you can see in this picture, now this main skeleton here, I think was 7.5, maybe getting close to 8 foot.
Right.
And then all around him are these spokes of skeletons.
Yeah.
Now, sometimes we find the skeletons that were put around the main figure would have been decapitated, and their legs and their head would have been between their legs.
Oh, wow.
Whoa.
So we believe that they could have been ritualistically sacrificed.
Wow.
And they were probably killed to be put in the mound, and then they were to serve
in the afterlife,
the main
right.
being there.
Wow.
So that happens a lot.
I knew about how they were put around. I had not heard that they were decapitated with their heads right there in the bottom. That's fascinating. Let me ask you. We live right here in Moundsville. I know you've been here before. We have the penitentiary, guys. If you don't know where Moundsville is at, you can look it up. It's the old West Virginia penitentiary. It looks like a massive castle. This thing is literally almost right across the street from the Grave Creek Mound, which is this massive mound. Do you have any thoughts or theories on these portals, these mounds being a portal, and allowing some kind of demonic evil entity type thing going on? Because the West Virginia State Penitentiary was the most violent penitentiary in America. It topped Alcatraz. I didn't know that. I always thought Alcatraz was the worst place. But if you study, if you go and take the tour and you study things, this thing was massively violent and bloody. Do you see any correlation with mounds and portals or places where the supernatural crosses over?
Well, the mounds were portals for the dead.
Okay.
And that's why Moundsville Prison, I think it's ranked like third most haunted place in America.
Yeah.
Because it has that mound right in right in its front lawn.
Right.
So it's a portal for the dead for them to come in and out of. And I did a correlational study of Giants and the show The Dead Files and Ghost Adventures, and found that most of their investigations were near where giants were buried.
Wow.
Very interesting.
Wow.
So most of their cases were in New York, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, West Virginia, and Kentucky.
Wow.
So right where the giant. But yeah, these mounds are portals for the dead.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'm the general manager of a hotel here in Moundsville, and we do. There's we get a lot of ghost hunters, a lot of paranormal people searching those things out. A lot of people going to the penitentiary. They actually have tours that you can go and try to get demon possessed, I guess. So it's been very interesting.
I was there for a conference one time,
Right.
and I found it interesting that where they hung people is just kind of like part of a walkway going out.
Right.
It's just like, well, you'd think they'd have gallows or something, but you
No.
look up there and go, nope, they just shoved him out right here.
Right. Yeah, the old.
Well, that was a little creepy, but I never went into the penitentiary. But in the interior there's some newer buildings, and inside of that they had a conference that I spoke to.
Very neat.
But yeah, I've been to Moundsville probably 6 times, 7 times.
Well, if you ever come back, we'd love to host you and have you down.
Yeah.
Another question from the audience says, is Fritz aware of mixed soil in specific mound sites, especially where the soil has been moved from miles away? And if so, any theories on this?
Yeah, there is several different mounds. There was one in Chillicothe where they had like red sand, and they had gray sand, white sand, black sand.
Wow.
They had about 6 different colors, all kind of like a decoration that they had put like on this layer.
Okay.
That when they were digging into it, they found that. So yeah, this must have been brought from great distances.
Right.
And why they did it, nobody knows. I think they just wanted to make it nice.
Extra ornament, yeah.
But yeah, there's a lot of times we find mounds and we know that the dirt that they used was taken from miles away. Miles.
Wow. So they
scooping up dirt around the area and putting it in. Sometimes they were going miles and miles to bring the dirt into the mound site.
So you're saying that this again points to that it wasn't like a little local nomadic tribe that only stayed 10, 15, 20 miles in an area. This was they had vast knowledge of the Americas, maybe.
Yeah, there wasn't an inch of North America they didn't know about.
Very cool.
So I wonder if the difference, bringing soil from a different location, would that in any way connect that open portal to that other area? I mean, I'm trying to figure out what the purpose may have been.
Yeah.
Springs? Are you talking about springs?
With the different soils, bringing them in from different areas.
She's maybe making a connection to different other mounds or other areas as a point of like a ley line connection or something.
Yeah, possibly.
Okay.
But they were bringing it in from different places. Now, that's the exception, not the norm.
Right.
I mean, a lot of times they would use soil that was nearby, but a lot of times too, we have mounds where there was a like a stone cone built over it with a keystone, and the keystone is important because that goes so far back in being able to build was to be
Wow.
able to keystone on a dome to hold it together. So sometimes we have stone tombs. Sometimes they would put dirt and then they would put a layer of clay, and then they would build fires so the clay would get rock hard, and then they would cover that with dirt. And it's generally those types of burials then where we're going to find more of an intact skeleton,
Wow.
because over the years no water had ever been able to penetrate
Right.
that clay. So we're going to have good skeletons in that type of burial.
Wow. Fritz, like I say, we've been to the Mound in Marietta. We haven't been to nearly what you've been to, but we've been to the Mound in Marietta. Obviously, we live here in Moundsville. We've been here a ton, and then we've also been to the Serpent Mound. Do you have any thoughts or any kind of maybe some interesting facts people may not be aware of from the Serpent Mound? And this is in Adams County, Ohio.
Well, we know the serpent represented the sun, and the Serpent Mound is aligned to the summer solstice sunset. And other than that, not too much. I mean, it's an interesting effigy.
Right.
It's another one that when you go there and you're walking by the embankments, you have a really hard time making it out as a serpent. If you stand on one end and you look at the other, just the fact that that it's a serpent, you would know that it's a serpent.
Right.
But
the mound itself,
the egg of that serpent's mouth, there was a stone mound, and there is a pillar that is probably about 6 foot. So if you walk down the embankment and get down to the lower area, that pillar that used to sit in the egg, you can still see it down there. So if you ever go back, take that trail to the right down the hill and then get on the bottom. And there's, it sits on a high bluff, but there's caves and stuff down there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Wow.
But that standing stone is pretty easy to find. It's a massive piece of rock. So that kind of harkens back a little bit to the megalithic era.
Right.
And then again, we're looking at a snake. And I always ask you, it's like, all right, like Brad Lepper, this thing was built 2,200 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
He found some carbon dating, and he was saying it was only 800 years old, which is ridiculous.
Right.
And now the Shawnee have claimed it because, they lived there in Ohio in historic times. And I'm saying, tell me one piece of evidence that your people ever worshiped the serpent.
Right.
And they never did. And Chief Cornstalk, who was a Shawnee chief, more associated with Point Peninsula, where he was killed.
Right.
That's just down the road from you.
Yep.
But when they asked him about the mounds in Ohio, he said they were already there when they got there.
Mm-hmm.
The Shawnee were not mound builders. They
Right.
certainly didn't build the Serpent mound. But now there's signs everywhere saying this is Shawnee.
Wow.
And again, it's just back to this whole woke, you know, we don't need any evidence to ascribe this earthwork to these people.
Right.
Just the fact that they lived there, all right, just say they lived. They weren't there 2000 BC.
Right.
They weren't anywhere around there.
I know.
And other tribal members, like Chief Cornstalk, I would believe him more than I am some guy that's in the Shawnee tribe right now who has maybe 1/5 and has red hair and, you know,
Right. Right.
looks nothing like an Indian, but now they're claiming that this is their own. And it's just ridiculous because they didn't build it. This was the Amorites, and we know that the serpent meant the sun to them. It has
Right.
solar alignment. You know, when you go back to everything makes sense. You know,
Yeah.
you don't have to bend it to make it fit. Amorites, serpent, sun, solar alignments. There you go.
Yeah.
It all fits.
I I think that's an easy step. It doesn't take much much faith to believe that. I mean, it is line upon line. I know Chief Joseph Riverwind. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him and his work.
Yeah, I
But
know.
yeah, and he's talked to a lot of the chiefs, and they say that they actually say exactly what you're saying. They didn't build the mounds; they were already there. Just like when we go and I think L.A. and Steve Quayle, different ones have talked to the ones in Peru, like Machu Picchu and different things like that. And the Incas say, "Hey, we didn't build it; we inherited it. It was there when we got here."
Right. Exactly.
Wow. Miranda and I are probably going to be going to the Newark Mounds in Heath, Ohio, fairly soon. Do you have any? And I know we looked at that a little bit tonight. Do you have any tips or things that you would say, "Hey, Jeff, you guys, while you're there, you ought to check this piece out"?
Do you have the slide of Newark where I show the Pythagorean triangle and the isosceles triangle?
Is this it right here?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, and I don't have the measurement, but the distance is like 6,150 feet.
Wow.
If you go from the middle of the octagon
Uh-huh.
to Geller Hill. Now,
Okay.
Geller Hill, the Hopo Road runs like right through it. It runs in the adjoining field,
Okay.
but that's the highest piece of land in that whole area, and it's just covered in mounds.
Wow.
They're kind of like swales now because it was farmed for a while.
Okay.
But you have to say that Geller Hill is basically the axis mundi of this whole setup.
So you think this is
Just
where
because-
they measured everything out from?
Well, it is because from the middle of the big hinge, what they're calling the Great Circle, it's the equal distance to Geller Hill, and it's the equal distance from the circle from the octagon.
That's amazing.
So
That's-
Geller Hill was really the axis mundi from which everything started because they measured 6,000 feet to get to the Great Circle to there. And of course, we know from the observatory circle to the Great Circle is 6 times 1,050 feet, which is the diameter of the circle attached to the octagon, and the same 6 times 1050 to get you down here to Wright Square.
Wow.
So just so much math going on in this site. So I would say, you can go to, if it's golf season, you can't get inside. So you can just walk around
Right.
the circle and the octagon. The circle is in good shape. You won't believe the size of the ditch that goes around this thing and just how it is. Now, I had another graphic of the Great Circle and the right square where I showed, well, this is a Pythagorean triangle that if you go from the middle of the octagon to the middle of the hinge, and then straight west and back north, you get a 3-4-5 Pythagorean triangle.
Wow.
But I have another photo that shows the square and the circle. Nope, that's not it. That's not it. Nope, seen that one. Maybe we don't have it. There we go.
There we go. Hey,
All
Fritz,
right.
Fritz, before you dig into this, I just want to give everybody, you said that line, those lines from Geller Hill were over 6,000 feet.
Yeah.
Guys, listen, a mile is 5,280 feet. So listen, I've built things in my life, Fritz. I've done carpentry work. It's tough to build a 10 by 10 square, and have it perfectly square. These guys are going out miles, over a mile, and getting these things accurate. That's fantastic. I think that's incredible.
Well, it shows that they could survey.
Yeah.
And if they could survey, then they could navigate the oceans.
Yep.
Wow. That's amazing. I'm sorry.
Go obviously they were surveyors, because there's no way they could draw a line like that without surveying equipment.
And being able to see and do this over a mile. And supposedly they didn't have any kind of technology. If these were just our American Indian ancestors, they did all this without survey equipment. They without any kind of technology, and it just by random coincidence it measures out to all these massive things. Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, so, they didn't have a string.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, they didn't have a mile-long string that they, and it's dead on.
Yeah.
I mean, it's right in the middle. I mean, it's perfect. But here's a really good example of mathematics used in this. And this graphic is kind of hard to say. But first, the circle above it, circumference of the circle is 3,700 feet. Okay.
Wow. Okay.
All right. And then part of these earthworks you can still see when you go.
Okay.
You can still see some of these earthworks. But when you get to the square, each side of the square was 925 feet. So times 4 is 3,700 square feet.
Wow.
So the only way they could have done that was to know the circumference of the circle. So they would have had to have known pi r squared.
Yeah.
To get the circumference, and then they divided that by 4, and then they added this earthwork. And we're going to see that a lot in these earthworks, where we're going to see numerical harmony, because the circle represents the sun and the square is the earth mother. And so when we see circles and squares, there'll be squared circles, because it likens back to the yin and the yang.
Right.
You wanted there to be an evenness between the powers of the sun and the power of the earth. So they were always looking for that equilibrium. And a lot of times they express that with numbers, which
So
is the case here.
So it's
with the circle.
fascinating that they've taken this, what we believe the fallen watchers had their own version of what creation was. We read that in the Sumerian text, and we see that God comes in and corrects it with the writings of Moses. What he gives Moses, but we see the propagation of this fallen watcher religion with the sun worship, with the Mother Earth worship, and you're saying that they brought this over from the Levant, over from Canaan, and just put these markers everywhere, all over the world, and it can't be by coincidence, because these same symbols, these same geometric. Fritz, I'm blown away tonight thinking about these giant race of people doing higher functioning trigonometry, higher functioning geometry, understanding the pi r squared. My dad would have made a joke back in the days that pi are not squared, pi is round, cornbread squared, but that's just Karnak math. But yeah, this is fascinating tonight. Looking at these mounds, looking at the geometry of them, this is fascinating.
So you can go there and you can see a circle, and just a little part of the square is left. You can see a little part of it if you drive over there, but you can either see the circle or you can see everything that's behind the circle, the measurement and the measurement with the square and how it aligns up with the circle or the octagon and how it aligns to the circle. Now, one other thing that they did, and I didn't get this graphic to you because I couldn't find it, but the moon, it's the perigee and the apogee, I believe is what it's called. And I could be wrong. I think that's what it's called. All right. So that's when the moon is at its smallest in the sky.
Okay.
You've seen the moon when it's real little up there.
Right.
And you've seen the moon when it's really big.
Yep.
Well, the ratio of the moon at its smallest and the moon at its largest is identical to the ratio of the circle attached to the octagon and the great circle.
What? Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
So the small moon and the large moon, the ratio of those two circles is identical to the perigee and the apogee of the moon. Now, how they figured that out, I have no idea.
My goodness. Wow.
But that's how deep it goes.
Wow.
Yeah. So it really gives you something more exciting to look at.
Yeah.
When you're there, when you realize how much is involved in its construction, than to just go there and see a circle.
Wow. Fritz, I tell you, I have thoroughly enjoyed talking to you tonight. Do you have any last thoughts or anything before we close up tonight?
Yeah, buy some books.
Yeah. Listen, guys.
That's why we're here. I'm just here to give you a little taste, and then you can read the books. And there's an awful lot more in those books than what we covered here in the last hour and 40 minutes. So
yeah, I know.
Go on Amazon and order one for you and order one for a friend.
Yeah, we've got the so if you guys go to the description in the YouTube video, we have a link where you can go and you can pull up all of Fritz's books. We've got two right here. Miranda went and grabbed them. We've got one here. This is your encyclopedia. Man, I'm telling you what, it is chock full. You could spend
Show how,
time just go through.
show how fat that book is.
Yeah, show this.
Show how fat that is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It's not 10 pages, guys. This is thick.
Yeah, that's 520 pages or something like that.
Wow. And then this is another one we've got. We bought this one because this is where we're at. We're in the Ohio Valley.
Yeah, and I get into a lot of the numerology and that, and kind of trace the origins of this race.
Yeah.
Back on that. But yeah, that was the first book. And then there's more in the encyclopedia that I added from there. But a lot of the numerology and stuff is in Fallen Angels.
Right.
And of course, if you just want to look at the mounds, we got 222 photos. I got all the histories. I got photos of them. I got directions. Over in Ohio, there's over 50 mounds that are address restricted. Means the Ohio Historical Society will not divulge the directions to those mounds.
Yeah.
Well, I found every one of them, photographed them, and those are all in that book. So I always say that if you go to Ohio to look at mounds, for every mound you see, you will pass by two because you didn't have my book.
Wow.
So
yeah.
I have
Fritz,
all
so
even if you just want to look at the mounds, you can do that. But if you do go to Ohio to look at the mounds, it's like you're really doing yourself a disservice because there might be a mound close to one of the sites they give you that's the size of a 5-story house sitting in a field. So you'd want to see that.
Wow. Well,
all the books are on Amazon.
Mhm.
I sell books on eBay as well at a little discount. So you can go there. You can go to Amazon. So
I would love to have the book on fairies.
I think that's the next one that we're getting, Fritz. Yeah.
Yeah.
You'll really enjoy that. I don't know how many stories there's in there. There's got to be 500 or 600 stories.
Wow.
Of people and their encounters with fairies, and some are like 5 or 6 pages long, and some of them are only a couple paragraphs. Well,
we owe you a debt of gratitude for collecting and being someone that is. This has taken a lot of time. This is not something you can just do in 15, 20 minutes, guys. We are in a debt of gratitude to you, Fritz, for doing this and taking the time and the effort and the dedication to go out and compile all of this information before it disappears.
Yeah.
So thank you so much. This is amazing.
I'm an obsessive compulsive. So actually, I'm a very sick man. Yeah.
We enjoy your sickness.
It's the only way you can do this. You got to have some sort of mental malfunction to do this for 20 years. But I'm wrapping it up. I got a couple more books I'm going to come out with, and then after 25 years, I'm calling it quits. I've got 9 books out there, and I think I'll go to 11, and then I'm going to be done with it. Of course, I'll still be around to talk about it and do shows and stuff like that. But
we have really enjoyed having you on. Would you be willing to come back and talk with us again?
No, absolutely.
Oh man,
that would be fantastic.
I know you can't maybe see the chat, but the chat has just been going like, please come back, please come back. Everybody has been absolutely loving this interview. So thank you so much for being on tonight, Fritz.
All right. Well,
Hey, hold on just a minute. We're gonna close out the show, but I want to talk to you here just a little bit after we get offline. Is that okay?
yeah, that's fine.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much, Fritz, and we'll see you a little bit, and we'll talk here in just a second.
All right. Good night, everyone.
All right. Wow.
Guys.
Oh my gosh.
Go get these books.
Get them now. Go to Amazon. Go to eBay, guys. Look up Fritz Zimmerman. If you go to the description link below, it's a link to all of his books on Amazon. And guys, listen, this is such a treat tonight. We're so grateful that Fritz was able to come on tonight. Look,
and they have pictures, guys.
Tons of pictures, tons of diagrams, tons of
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, all kinds of things, guys. Listen, this has been an amazing night tonight. We want to say thank you, Fritz, for coming on the Way Remnant. Listen, you can find Fritz on Facebook. Just look up Fritz Zimmerman. You can find him on Twitter. His Twitter is @GiantSkeletons. And then all of his books can be found below in the description link below. Guys, we have been so honored, and I just praise Yah for what Fritz has done.
Yeah.
I'm telling you what, this has been an amazing compilation of his work, and it's just been awesome. My mind is just blown. I've studied giants.
Yeah.
I have studied giants a lot, and to the point where
we heard things tonight we've not heard before.
Never heard some of these things before in my life, and it just rekindles the fervor to want to go out and look these things up, guys. Again, this stuff proves the Bible is true.
Exactly.
From Genesis to the maps. That is one of the reasons that the modern society fights this information so bad, is because it proves that God's word is 100% true.
And we have seen so many people, atheists, that get studying these topics.
Boom.
And they end up coming to Yeshua, to Jesus, because of these topics. So it's super cool.
Gosh, wow. Well, guys, listen, we appreciate you guys. If you have liked this video, go and hit the like button right now. And then after this video is done, if you will put some comments, tell us what you really liked about this interview tonight. Put those in the comments after the live show is done, and hit the share button. Share this out, because listen, this information, Miranda, needs to get out there more and more and more. I'm telling you, it is so good. So guys, listen, we appreciate you coming and joining us tonight. You guys have been awesome. I loved all the questions. And listen, we're coming up next week on September 4th. We're going to have Nate Wolf, Fired from Truth. He's going to be talking about how I came to Torah. The following Sunday after that, Miranda, we're just packed. The following Sunday after that, on September 11th, we're going to have Vicki Joy coming in and talking about her book, They Only Come Out at Night. I cannot wait for that. That's going to be fascinating. Guys, we love you. Thank you so much to everybody that joined in tonight. So good to see everybody, and it has been a blast. And we will see you on the next time, guys. Shalom, shalom.